There are many figures who contribute to history. Most are overlooked, some command the spotlight, and some are simply forgotten. American history is no exception, with heroes, traitors, villains, and simply those who were in the right spot at the right time. But all these figures, good or bad, would contribute to this story, our story. This is Forgotten Figures. Few moments are as defining throughout history as the shot heard round the world, and few men are as forgotten as Captain John Parker, the commanding officer of the Lexington Militia that April morning on the Lexington Common. In what would soon become the American War for Independence, he would be overshadowed by Franklin, Jefferson, and Washington, but his role in history was no less important. Not a whole lot is known about Captain Parker. He was born on July 13, 1729 in Lexington, which was then in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. He led a simple yet noble life as a farmer until France and England went to war in 1756. During the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War for the European viewers, he was present in General Amherst's army during the siege and capture of Louisbourg and Nova Scotia in 1758, and on the Plains of Abraham outside Quebec when General James Wolfe was killed. At war's end, he returned to his normal life in Lexington, where, because of his age and military experience, he would be elected as captain of the Lexington Militia. It's important to pause here for a minute to go over a quick distinction. The militia was a local military unit formed to protect the community in the event of a war. The Minutemen, which history largely focuses on, was an elite group that could assemble quickly or at a minute's notice and could travel rapidly toward any conflict. Essentially, the Minutemen were the equivalent of today's Army Rangers, whereas the militia would be the larger military body, although today it is the National Guard. Obviously, a lot would change between 1763 and 1775, as the drumbeat of war grew louder and louder. After the Boston Tea Party in 1773, Massachusetts was seen in a state of rebellion, and it was deemed necessary by King George III and Parliament to confiscate all weapons and round up the ringleaders of the supposed insurrection. And so it was, on the night of April 18, 1775, that a contingent of soldiers from the 4th, 5th, and 10th Regiments of Foot, led by Major Pitcairn, would march out of Boston in the direction of Concord. Paul Revere would ride out through the country, alerting citizens to the British movements, along with William Doss and Dr. Joseph Warren, two forgotten figures in their own rights. Having been alerted, Parker assembled the Lexington Militia on the Common and awaited the marching redcoats. At 4 a.m., he had two scouts ride toward Boston to ascertain the location of the army, while the militia retired to Buckman's Tavern. Roughly an hour later, they were aroused by a rider saying the British army was nearly to Lexington. Parker rounded up his men once more and assembled them once again on the Common. As the British army halted, there were cries to disperse. Legend has it that Parker uttered these words to his men: "Stand your ground, don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have a war, let it begin here." Captain Parker was determined to not be the instigator and told his men to disperse and let the army pass. However, there was confusion amongst the British as their forces began to split, taking the two roads flanking the militia. Men became confused on both sides, and in the fog of war, the lone shot rang out. The ensuing conflict would leave 8 militiamen dead and another 10 wounded. The British would reform their ranks and continue marching toward Concord. Captain Parker and several others would tend to the wounded until he reformed his militia unit and waited for the inevitable return of the redcoats. The British army would go on to be repulsed at Concord's North Bridge and would be harassed by several militia companies from the outlying towns on the hurried march back to Boston. In Lexington, Parker would have his revenge, as his company joined the others surrounding Pitcairn as he ran back to Boston. Captain Parker and the Lexington Militia would join in the siege of Boston, but Parker would not live to see the fruits of what transpired in Lexington. On September 17, 1775, at the age of 46, Parker would die of tuberculosis. His contribution is important to the grand scheme of things. A younger, more hot-headed captain may have fired first that April morning. Even as the British were retreating, Parker could have let them pass without disruption. Today, the likeness of the Minutemen is largely attributed to Parker, and a statue is dedicated in his honor on the Lexington Green. The Lexington Militia still lives on as well, in the 181st and 182nd Infantry Regiments of the Massachusetts National Guard. In our own time, history is repeating itself with a governing body calling for a ban on guns and even more than one politician saying they will go door to door to confiscate weapons. Captain Parker was a simple farmer, but his choice between give up the weapons in Concord or fight to protect them was an easy one. Which would you choose? Thanks for watching my video. Please follow me on Twitter at PastAndPresent4. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks again.